TechTrends podcast, where we discuss the latest manufacturing technology, research, and news. Today's episode is sponsored by IMTS Plus. I'm Ramia Lloyd, and I'm here with...
I'm Elissa Davis.
And I'm Benjamin Moses. Hello, everyone.
Hi, friends.
Good morning.
Elissa, I know you've been on the road a little bit.
Yes.
Traveling the world, especially the
Yes.
regional events. Tell me about Southtech.
So Southtech was in Greenville, South Carolina, and I've never been to South Carolina, and the Greenville airport was an adventure.
Small guy, isn't it?
It's very small, and I have kind of a funny story about the hotel shuttle that I'll tell later. But so when we got there, so we went to Southtech, and it's smaller than like East Tech. It's obviously a much smaller show.
Sure.
But it was busy.
Oh, yeah?
It was
nice.
And people were like, people honestly were saying that like they prefer Southtech to Westtech.
Wow, that's interesting.
Which I was not expecting.
Yeah.
People have been saying that since it moved to Long Beach, it's just really different. So people love Southtech.
Okay.
And again, it's in Greenville, South Carolina, which is like not a place you think of when you think of like technology mecca, but like
Sure,
apparently that's people really, really like Southtech. I did see something I noticed a lot of like training software,
Oh, interesting.
like virtual training software.
Okay.
I saw quite a few booths that had that. So I guess that's something that's definitely kind of becoming more and more
So are they
prevalent.
using like augmented reality?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think like Steve used it when he went to Lyft.
Yep.
For the welding test. So yeah, I was kind of surprised by that. I don't know why I wasn't expecting that, but I was not expecting that.
I do see a lot of that use cases more where there's a lot of human to machine interaction. So welding's, I've seen that a couple of years ago with Lincoln Electric pushed that out, and it's been adopted a lot more. But I see that on some of the larger organizations too, where they're doing like cable assembly or something fairly intricate where there's safety involved. There's some level of human repetitive nature that you have to build up, some muscle memory I think you have to build up. So that's very interesting. I'm glad to see that occurring more often.
Yeah. I was kind of pleasantly surprised by that. But there was a lot of software at Southtech. That was definitely like a very prevalent one.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. There was a couple of 3D printing ones out there. But I mean, SME, they put on a great show.
Good.
SME and AMT
Of course.
put on a great show. Yeah. So
And that's interesting that you mentioned the preference between Southtech, because I do think versus Westtech, because I do think logistics to an event, that's fairly underrated. And Greenville is fairly small, but I forgot the university is nearby. They specialize in like high-end metrology, and they're pushing the envelope on what they're doing. So there is, overlooked hub of manufacturing in the Southeast, particularly if you look at some of the manufacturing USA institutes. You have, I think it's Power, that's in that Southeast area. So it's very interesting that you mentioned Southtech, but in comparison, like the West Coast manufacturing scene is very hot. So it's interesting that you mentioned that not as fun an experience as Southtech.
yeah, it was interesting because people were saying like you said, like logistically, some people were like, oh, it's kind of a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I had been to Long Beach the year before, and I stayed across the street from the convention center, and I was like, it's actually in a really central location.
Yep.
So I'm not sure like why people are like, oh, logistically it's a nightmare. Like it's in a good location. It's near the waterfront, like kind of the touristy kind of area.
Sure.
It's easy to get to and from. So like Westtech, it was definitely not as busy as Southtech. I will say that.
Okay.
But Westtech also, I think, is an entirely different crowd than Southtech.
It is, and I think that's one thing. So I feel like the audience in Greenville, they're traveling to Greenville, but I feel like the ones in Long Beach, it's not quite driving, but a lot of more local manufacturing. Because I mean, other than like in terms of population of manufacturers, like the West Coast is significantly high. Particularly California, right?
Yeah, no, definitely most people there were from California.
Yeah.
Like they were from the Southern California area,
Right.
and they had come to Long Beach for the show.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely less of a travel element, I think, for Westtech. But, and then there's also the aero-def part of it.
That's true.
Yes.
Yep.
Which, again, like they're attached, but they're very different. So, like, Aerodef started, their first keynote was at 8 a.m.
That's early.
But the show floor for Westtech didn't open till 9:30.
Yeah.
And I'm like, logistically, I don't know how great that is, but like, it.
Yep.
I'm not in charge of the planning, so.
So Aerodef is their aerospace and defense
Yes.
exhibition events, which is actually fairly good to participate in because getting into both of those markets, with Boeing looking at their next gen aircraft and same with Airbus. So getting the aerospace, but also the defense side of aerospace is a very interesting market as both industries are pushing a lot more funding for the next generation equipment going forward. So
Yeah, and I know we've talked a few times about different branches of the military.
Yep.
Definitely breaking into like 3D, like additive, which is also very big on the West Coast. There was an astronaut, a former astronaut,
So cool.
which anyone who knows me knows that I'm a big sucker for space stuff. At IMTS last year, there was an astronaut at the student summit, and I spent a lot of my time going through social posts for IMTS, and I really, really, really wanted to meet the astronaut.
Oh,
He was like signing posters and taking pictures, and I was like nerding out. I was like, I gotta go see this astronaut. But like time wise, he'd always be gone, like before I'd be able to go down there.
Right.
Or he'd be like doing a podcast, or like he would just not be there, and I was getting really sad. I was like, am I gonna miss the astronaut? And so I eventually was able to get down there and meet the astronaut. I have a mildly embarrassing picture with him because I'm smiling like an idiot, and he's all calm, cool, and collected. And I have a signed poster from him that hangs on my wall. But
So fun.
yeah, I'm a huge nerd when it comes to space and like astronauts and stuff. I think it's so cool.
To be fair, I think people need to prepare themselves that when they take a picture with someone not quite idolized, but kind of are very interested in, especially someone that's influenced, it's always going to be an awkward picture.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
always going to be terrible no matter what.
You're
So just be
just
prepared.
smiling so goofily, like you just look so stupid compared to that person. But the astronaut who spoke at Westtech, he actually spoke about his work on, I think it's called Moxie, on the Perseverance rover.
Yep.
So it's like converting things into oxygen on Mars. And I believe Kathy, our head editor, is going to be writing an article about it.
Nice.
But he was an astronaut like back in the 90s, and his picture looked very different than how he looks now. 'Cause he has his astronaut picture as his picture.
Yeah.
But I unfortunately wasn't able to go to the presentation, but I mean, I thought that was really fascinating, and I would have loved to have gone to it, but I was like, I didn't know there was an astronaut there until after the fact, and I was like, there's an astronaut here? And so.
That was your singular focus now.
It was like, man, I miss the astronaut. That's like all I could think about was I miss the astronaut. I wanted to be an astronomer for a long time, and then I realized there's way more physics involved in it than I would have liked. So went to communications instead. So
Close.
less math.
So since we are dropping this album around Thanksgiving, I wanted to see what's everyone's plans for Thanksgiving. Tell me about your food. What are you guys doing? How much you hate your family that you're going to go see?
Well, my older sister and her husband, they alternate holidays between my family and his family.
Okay.
So last year they were at our house for Christmas and his parents' house for Thanksgiving. So this year they'll be at our house for Thanksgiving. We go all out for Thanksgiving. We don't really do turkey anymore. My mom likes to make prime rib. That's what she likes to make, and she does it really, really well. And then we've got obviously all the fixins. We got mashed potatoes. We got stuffing. Pumpkin pie, gravy. I always try to make gravy from scratch, but sometimes they get upset with me because they're like, it's like the last thing that's made, and they're just like, let's just do the instant stuff. So it's like
done. We're ready to eat. Yeah.
And I'm like, but it tastes better when you make it from scratch, in my opinion.
And it's fresh.
Yeah,
hot and fresh.
Yeah, and then we, but like we do like frozen rolls. You just stick in the oven.
Yeah.
Last year I think we ate it like 5 or 5:30, which is the latest we've ever eaten on Thanksgiving.
Really?
Because we got started a lot later than we usually do.
Okay.
But so it's a big, loud, gregarious family affair at the Davis household. So it's a lot of fun though. We usually watch like the Twilight Zone marathon.
Oh, okay.
Because they usually have one on like Thanksgiving and Christmas, so we usually do that. And we'll watch it, and then we'll decorate the tree after Thanksgiving.
Nice.
That's when we bring out the holiday decorations too, just after Thanksgiving.
Yep.
How about you, Ramia? What do you got planned?
As you guys know, my parents live in Florida, so I'll be taking a trip to Tampa.
Nice.
My brother won't be able to make it. He's in Japan right now, but it'll be just us. We're hanging out. I'm in charge of mac and cheese, which is obviously the most important part of Thanksgiving. So I'm like mentally preparing to get all my stuff ready. That's pretty much it. We do not stray from football. Like,
Oh yeah.
Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. Literally, food and football.
Yep.
I don't need anything else. So that's what we're doing. And then unfortunately, I'm a Christmas November 1st person. So like,
so it's already done.
it's Christmas.
Yeah.
It's from now until Thanksgiving. Then we have Thanksgiving for like 2 days.
And then it's
Thanksgiving,
Christmas,
Black Friday,
Christmas.
and then it's Christmas again.
So, are you playing Mariah Carey November 1st, or do you wait?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Like when she's like, "It's time," I'm there. Me and her
That in my
together.
head.
Yes.
It's like November 1st.
Mariah Carey and I are one.
Nice. Nice. So
about you?
we'll hopefully see both of our parents. They both live in Maryland, kind of close to each other. So hopefully, what we've trying to do is go to my parents or her parents, my wife's parents, for lunch, and then we'll go to the other parents for dinner.
Nice. That's smart.
So my mom prepares a lot of food. She still this was back in the day when my brother and I and my sister were eating a ton of food, like in our youth prime, and she never cut that down. So at Thanksgiving, which we may invite another family or it's just us, there's gonna be a 20-pound turkey plus all the fixins plus all the Indian food that she can make next to it. I was like, Mom, there's like 10 of us here. There's not enough mouths for this to eat all this. What are we gonna do with all this? So there's gonna be too much food, and I'm on the fence about turkey. I really like. A couple of years ago, we did when we made we had Thanksgiving at our place. It was just our family. We did a small game hen competition. So we each had a game hen, like small guy, just
Yeah.
3 of us. So my wife prepared it one way, and I prepared another way, and we saw who did the best.
That's
Nice.
fun.
So that was fun. That worked out I really like the small turkeys or small game birds for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. Or chicken's okay, turkey's okay. It's not my favorite meat. It tends to get dry quick.
Yeah.
We would end up with so much extra turkey. That's why my
Yeah.
mom she'll do like a turkey breast.
Right.
So we have like turkey, you
Yeah.
know, because it's
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. But that's actually kind of pivoted to prime rib.
Yeah.
Plus, my older sister doesn't like ham, and she doesn't really like turkey,
Yeah.
but she loves steak.
Nice.
So she will eat the prime rib.
Gotcha.
But that sounds like my parents' ideal Thanksgiving dinner. My parents love Indian food. I mean, my whole family loves Indian food, but my
Yeah.
parents love
Yep.
Indian food. So, like, if you have leftovers, feel free to
Oh, yeah.
give them
Yeah, I
to
was
me.
gonna
My
say,
parents will take
I'll
them.
bring a Tupperware. We'll
Yeah.
just show up.
I
Let me
got
know
you.
what day.
I'll see if we can figure out a way to keep it till our next recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then we'll go to my wife's parents' place, and they'll have Indian food too, mainly Indian food. They won't have too many like Western style food, but their food's gonna be super spicy. That's why it depends on the time of day. Hopefully it's for dinner this year, but it's gonna be a fun experience either way.
Yeah. Nice.
Cool.
Awesome.
Ramia, you want to tell us about today's sponsor?
Today's sponsor is IMTS Plus, manufacturing digital content to get you ready for IMTS and after. We are hosting videos and articles on topics relevant to manufacturing technologies and the business of manufacturing. It's all free. I guarantee you'll find something you like.
Awesome, Ramia. Thank you. So today, I've got an article on tactile sensors for robots. So end-of-arm tooling and robots have come a long way, and it's fairly interesting that you see evolutions on the 3 main sections of automation. I break mainly robotic arms to 3 ways. One is the interface between the robot to what it's interacting with, so the end-of-arm tooling. You have the arm itself, and then you have we'll call it brain that's controlling everything. And there's been a lot of evolution on kind of the brain controlling everything, particularly as you connect like vision systems or now with cobots, right? So as you add sensors for it to act differently and behave differently. It's fairly interesting. Now they're looking at more sensors at the end of arm tooling. So as you interact, what they're trying to, what in general, either research or industry is headed towards is more dexterity at the end of arm tooling. Not quite to you see like fingers represented, but even like the claws, grips, being able to handle more delicate equipment.
Okay.
And the main use cases that we've seen is broadening the spectrum of automation. So you look at some of the interesting use cases of like food separation. So as you're farming food, how do you know what's good and bad? You know, using vision systems to identify what's good and bad, that exists. Using like paddles or compressed air to blow stuff off the conveyors, but shifting to suctions or soft robots or something that can handle a soft, semi-ripe food for separating, but also now we're getting to food prep, right? So there's a lot of scenarios where it makes sense to have something delicate, even in aerospace, like we were just talking about aerodef. Aerospace has some very delicate components, electronics, things like that. So shifting towards being a more capable piece of automation with Enderform 2 that has more sensors built into it is where they're headed. But they are headed down an interesting path because the cost of sensors have dropped significantly, but it depends on what tier you're looking at for sensors. So there are quality concerns and endurance concerns about these sensors because it's constantly being used. So it's a double-edged sword when they were looking at this scenario. So I thought it was a really interesting use case for automation.
Yeah, I mean, especially as more and more robotics are being used for, like, I know I recently saw like Sweetgreen is using robots to like make the bowls now.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't want it like splattering hummus all over the place. You know, you want it to be like a little gentle scoop. And so, I mean, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, to be honest with you. I mean, so like with the sensors, I guess, do they have like a high wear and tear rate?
Yeah, so it's a interface. So basically you're touching, the sensor is in between the gripper and the object you're touching. So it's either measuring force, measuring how much to compress, or measuring something that you want to limit the capability of that gripper. So it's almost a wear item at that point. So I think that's where they're trying to figure out is the blend of, we want it to last forever, but that may not work for the dexterity they're looking for. So if you go to a wear item, now is it cheap enough that you can replace it like once a month or something like that?
I hadn't really thought of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a fun experiment.
Yeah.
So Elissa, tell me about 3D printing and homes. I know you ran across a pretty interesting one.
Yes. This is one of the subjects I'm very interested in. So the article that I'm talking about today is specifically about can 3D printed homes solve Colorado's housing crisis?
Oh, interesting.
And I lived in Colorado for 6 years, and I can tell you that there is definitely a housing crisis. And, you know, part of it is because, similar to where we are in Northern Virginia, there's a very large, like retired or post-military career community.
Right.
And because that's where the jobs are, right? Because, you know, like my dad works in, he's a contractor. He's a former Army. And so we lived in Colorado, and Colorado has exploded over the last 10 years. And so this is kind of asking, okay, well, now houses are expensive to build, houses are expensive to buy. How do we kind of, and there's also obviously like a very large homeless population in Colorado as well, specifically in areas like Denver, Colorado Springs. So this is specifically about the Greeley Weld Habitat for Humanity. And so actually out here in Virginia is where the first 3D printed home for Habitat for Humanity was done. Cool. So they saw that happening, and they were like, well, can we then do that in Colorado and use those same materials to kind of start solving this problem? And I did a week with Habitat for Humanity when I was in college, and normally they take, I did it in Cleveland, where they just take old houses and tear it down to the studs and rebuild it.
And what is the benefit? And the one article I ran across separately on, I think I talked about in the Tech Report, is like the cost analysis benefit. Getting that deeper. In some cases, additive is going to be more costly, but fine if there is a benefit. So we're seeing use cases where there's a benefit to the end user, like improved efficiency for like gas turbine engines, so or better combustion, so it's less impact to the environment, or it's better performance to like an engine. But for housing, it's more of a cost benefit, and I think the technology maturation still needs to occur a little bit more for us to understand, can it be cheaper, or they're cutting costs somewhere else, right? So maybe the pad can be different, or labor for putting the accessories, because it's still a lot of finishing that you have to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And when we moved a couple of years ago, we bought a new construction, and just putting up the timber was fast.
Yeah.
The foundation and timber, the structure was super fast, because a lot of that's pre-built. The finishing took forever because it was on-site. So I do see the best comparison I can see is I'm seeing a lot of pre-built houses that you just ship to the site and you just put it together in sections.
Yeah.
So I see that as a fair comparison between the additively printed house, which I'm on the fence about which one I prefer.
I mean, they said that they have a company that they're specifically looking to work with, and this company is actually specifically training people to then be able to work with Habitat for Humanity to 3D print the homes. And they're expecting their first graduates of that program in 2024.
That's cool.
So hopefully next year they'll be able to start doing the program and start helping with the housing crisis in Colorado. Shout out to Colorado. Beautiful sunsets. Nothing beats a Colorado sunset or a sunrise, but it's definitely not Northern Virginia, I can say that much.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome, guys. Ramia, where can they find more info about us?
amtonline.org/resources. Like, share, subscribe.
Bing bong.
Miss you, Steven.
Bye, everyone.